Hello, Writing Rabble. It's your rabble rouser, author Chris Everhart, back with another session for new writers who want to get started and experienced writers who just want a different look and view at storytelling. And maybe you guys can get something here. The Writing Rabble is a community for ordinary people who want to learn how to write and sell their books. And of course, as I do every week, I've got Wes Nelson, my cohort, and so far student, still a student.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
good.
for
Uh,
a long time.
yeah, we missed. It's been about a week and a half or more since we've done a session, and that's because I was in Phoenix for Phoenix Fan Fusion Comic Con last weekend, and that was fun. The show was okay as far as sales, and I also realized I got to get a little more active on my at my table because
Oh,
yeah, we met up with our the guy that we're working with. His name's Joey Galvez, and he's going to be doing some promotion and stuff. He wants to do some comic book publishing. He's kind of like our expert on comic books because Debbie and I. Oh, and that's because of. Hold on. So that's because of Badass
no.
Girl. This is our comic book that we're promoting at Comic Cons around the country when we can. Anyway, yeah, Joey, we met him last year at Phoenix Fan Fusion. He lives down there, and he's starting doing promoting and of comic books and marketing and setting up Kickstarters for people and wants to do some publishing. So we spent a lot of time with him, and that was really good. But one thing I did notice is that when he got out in front of the table and started talking to people, we sold more books.
Oh,
So, I think that Debbie, my comic book partner, and I are maybe a little burned out on the Comic Con experience. So, just got to get a little more active. Our
I
next,
thought we became writers so we could hide, not be more active.
yeah, man, I'll tell you, what's weird is that when I was going to Comic Con selling my book, so I've got I don't know if you can even see it, but over my shoulder here, hard to see, but this whole shelf is filled with books that I've written
Wow.
and published, and all of those, there's the young adult, and there are ones for like elementary school also. So what I used to do was I'd go to Comic Cons with all of those books, and I'd set them up on a stand, and I had one of my books has a green robot in it, and I had a guy I knew in Tennessee who was a artist make basically a puppet, a full size puppet of this green robot.
Yeah,
And I was, always doing the spiel. I had so much to talk about. I had the robot to bring the kids over and stuff like
yeah,
that. And there just doesn't seem to be as much to uh, have fun with with the comic book. So
yeah,
that just means that I got to get up and start doing a little more work. That's all. And frankly, it's a lot more fun when you're selling comic books and talking
yeah,
to people about it. So
yeah.
we've got the coming next one is here in Minneapolis downtown week after 4th of July.
Hmm,
So yeah, you might want to
yeah,
pop in and
for
check it
sure.
out. Maybe bring one or more of the kids.
Yeah.
It's not a huge one to my knowledge, but it is a fairly well attended one. So.
Is there
Uh,
another one in November too, or is that
Yes.
okay?
The one in July is called Convergence.
Okay.
That one's been around for a while. For some reason, we kept missing. They have a weird deadline for getting signed up. So for some reason, we missed it like 4 years in a row,
No,
and we
no.
finally got it right this year. And then in November is Twin Cities Con,
Oh,
or
okay.
TC Con, Twin Cities Con, and uh, that's done by a guy from Iowa who does, I think, 4 different cons now.
Hmm.
So yeah, so it's a little bit grassroots, a little bit corporate, but there are companies who do dozens around the country every year. But this one is a little closer to homegrown. So, and he's trying to build it up into something bigger, which this town really needs.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and we might. I'm still waiting to hear back from New York Comic Con to see if we may be going out there in September or October. I don't can't
Ooh,
remember. Yeah.
cool.
Yeah, and then we also got into the one in San Francisco that happens, I think, over Thanksgiving Day weekend.
Okay.
And that I don't know if I'd go out to San Fran for that, but my partner Debbie and her husband have a house out there, so she will probably be out there. So
Okay.
yeah, so that's the big doings with Badass Girl.
Sweet.
And yeah, thanks. And what else? What's been going on with you? What have you been up to?
Slow week, but slow and steady is the name of the game now.
Uh huh.
I had some good days, a couple, days where nothing was happening and I was forcing it. But yeah, it's been that 200, word limit has been a good, just sort of jumping off point. And when I can get it done, I get it done. And it's been rewarding. It's just now I feel like the story's kind of slowing down
Okay.
and it feels like a relationship once you get past the dating phase. It's like I still like the story. I
Yeah.
love the story, but now it's like how do I keep the burning embers going,
Yeah.
like it's like
You have to
200
sit.
words at a time is not enough to really like
Mm-hmm.
stoke the fire sometimes, but it's what I can do, so
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. You have to sit down with it and say, "Look, you're great. I think you're great."
It's me, not you.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Well, what's funny is that I had a conversation with my publisher on Friday,
Yeah.
and I'm waving the white flag on my trilogy, the
Really?
I Demon trilogy. I can't. I mean, I know what work needs to be done and how to
Yeah.
fix it now, but and I've already gone through and pretty well fixed the first book one, but I am so sick of looking at it. I can't even stand it. And I told him, and yeah, he's got some, a few writers in his stable. And I said, hey, if somebody can kind of take this over and fill out the 20 or 25% of book two that needs to be completed and do the first draft, of book three, and I can help with the outline and then maybe do the final draft. I'll gladly share author credit and royalties because
Wow.
yeah, I see. I have to work fast. It's really hard for me, and the reason for me is that I think is that when I'm living with the story, I basically tell myself the story over and over and over again.
Okay.
That's why I'm desperate to find a way to really put stuff out fast.
Yeah.
And because I was stuck so long on this trilogy and it was just kind of hanging there, I
Hmm.
wasn't even really working on it actively for a few months,
Yeah.
and until I kind of uncovered the missing link of central conflict, I was just kind of ruminating on it.
Yeah.
And just at the point where, and I think it's a good book. I like the characters, I like the concept. I just can't stand it anymore. It's probably like if somebody made me sit down and watch Caddyshack for 24 months straight.
Yeah. Yeah.
Eventually, I'd probably get sick of it,
Yeah.
But so that's where I'm at with that. So it's funny you bring that up right
Wow.
now. Yeah.
That must take a lot to get to that point where you're waving the white flag.
Oh God, yeah, it does. Because I, 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 hmm, I know I'm responsible for getting the book done, right? Um, and coming to that conclusion that I need help and maybe a lot of it is yeah, it's humbling.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, but I maybe I just as I grow older, I just have less of a tolerance for misery than I
Yeah.
used to, and so I'm not really interested in spending a lot of time, you know, beating my head against this book.
Right. It must feel good too, though, to have it kind of off your plate.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to talk some more, and we're going to talk with a couple of his other writers, and we'll see what to what extent they can or will help out. But
Yeah,
yeah, it feels good already to know that I'm not going to have to struggle with it so much
yeah,
from here on in. And I do have some other things that I want to work on. One thing is I'm going to start a romance series that I've fairly well uh, created the universe for it. Now it's going to be sci-fi romance because it
cool.
has to be something that's an interesting theme or subject
Yeah,
matter for
yeah,
me to follow through with it. And I'm really excited about that because I think the universe is really coming together, and the first book is coming together as well. And it's been a lot of fun learning about how romance is written. It's just
yeah,
really cool.
yeah. I would
Which
have never thought
surprises
it
me.
was as different as you said. It's
Mm,
it's it's crazy how different it is, but it makes perfect sense.
yeah, yeah, it is. It's not unlike, writing for film where
Yeah,
things have to happen. And generally speaking, my screenwriter friend would, disagree with me a bit, but generally things have to happen in a certain order and in certain places. And if it's not there, it's not a screenplay.
yeah.
And and also, I'm finding more and more sort of guides for romance writing now that I'm looking for them.
Yeah.
In fact, I just found one today on YouTube where I've been studying pretty hard on Gwen Hayes's Romancing the Beat. In fact, I've got it right here.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, this is terrific, terrific book. A nice breakdown in what she calls four acts or four phases of romance, and I think she says five beats in each phase. But I found this video from a romance writer who broke it down kind of in eight, nine, I can't remember exactly beats, and a new and slightly different explanation of the story structure, which has been really helpful too. So, because I'm looking for the I'm looking for the effective outline for romance that I can follow and get some books done.
So the story hill where the llama finds its llama mate. That's what
Right,
you're
yeah, that's what
okay.
that's a good one. I like that. Yeah, and so, but like I said last time we talked, I am finding that these um, the phases and beats that I'm learning about in romance, they do fall on the story hill pretty well.
Yeah.
And I'm guessing that if there are any places that I can identify where they don't fall in line with the story hill, that it's the story hill that's the problem,
Oh,
not their outlining or yeah or format. So
yeah.
and I really haven't found anything that's blown my mind yet or made me think that I've really gotten the story hill wrong. So
Yeah.
but again, it bears proving out because as I work on these stories, I'm learning more about outlining storytelling and characters in general. That's going to affect the way I write
Yeah.
pretty much anything else that I do get into. But
Nice.
yeah, so that's been fun. And so you feeling like you're slowing down? Is that what I
I'm
heard you say?
slowing down on purpose in order to
Right.
take some pressure off of myself that was not sustainable.
Yeah.
I still like the story. I still want to complete it.
Mm-hmm.
But in this new way of like sitting, it's like watching a movie, but in like 10-minute chunks where there's some disconnect and
Yeah.
it's hard to like string the whole thing together. And so I'm trying to adapt my style to this where I'll sit down and I'll have to kind of go through a process of like, okay, where are we at? What did we do? And there's a little bit more of that, like preparing myself to dive into it again.
Mm-hmm.
And it takes a little bit longer to do that because there's a little bit more distance in between it. So that's been
Yeah.
kind of the new adaptation, and it's a little challenging. But I'm not by no means am I sick of it yet. And I would know. I think because
Yeah.
other things have come and gone, or it just I still want to do it, so that's good.
The gaps that you're getting between writing periods, are we talking about a day or multiple days sometimes, or it varies, or what?
Yeah, it's at most it's like three. Usually it's one or two, and then the day it'll be like a day off, and then the next day
Mm.
I'll do like a lot. So it's not too different than where it was before. It's just I've taken some of the pressure off, but maybe I need more pressure. I don't know. This all just feels like do the best we can. And I like what you said about if we do 200 words a day, that still gets us there eventually. So
Yeah. Yeah.
just
Well, that 200 books a day could get you one book a year, and that ain't
yeah,
bad.
right.
Um, so, all right. So, and where are you at with your outlining in general?
So
And
I
the correlating question to that is, is the Story Hill, or are the Story Hill materials as I've got them now, are those helping you outline?
yes,
Okay.
yeah. I the thing that I just wrote through, like the goal change. I like it. It seems cool. It seems exciting to me. In that goal shift, goal change, climax scene, I had a character show up who I had always planned on him being there, but he decided to have superpowers during the scene. It was like,
Okay.
sweet. He's like, he jumps off a bridge and then he flies away, and I was like, that's cool. I'm going with that. So now I'm like, do I sprinkle the foreshadowing in on that? I want him to play a bigger role,
Hmm.
and now I'm sort of like trying to find ways to sort of shoehorn him in earlier. He was already there. I'd already written him in, but now I'm like, do I need more of him, or does it seem so obvious that I'm just plopping him into these scenes? So that's what I'm kind of struggling with right now. I mean, how much do I handhold the audience, or how much do I just trust that they'll get it?
Okay. Well, you jumped rails there. So we started talking about how to keep it fresh, uh, and then we went on to you went on to the next topic. So let's get back to, um, are you okay? So is it does the okay? You still like the story? You said okay. Are you still excited about it?
Yep.
Okay. And but what you're saying is that it's a little more cumbersome, your writing is, when you're writing in shorter, non OCD sessions,
Yeah. Yeah.
that so that you can have a life outside of or away from your keyboard.
Mm-hmm.
And and the cumbersome part, and I understand this pretty well, because I used to do the thing where I would go back and read the last chapter that I wrote, maybe edit it lightly, and then start with the next one.
Yeah.
So you are in the process of figuring out what works for you, right? So not every single method works for every different author. And I've heard people say, "Oh, you shouldn't do that. You'll never get anything done." And then I've heard people say, I know people say I shouldn't do that, but I do that. I read
Mm-hmm.
my last chapter." Some writers say that when they reach their writing goal for the day, whether it's time or words, they kind of wrap up what they're the flow of what they're working on, and then leave like one sentence or an unfinished sentence of the next
Oh,
paragraph to prompt them for when they sit down next.
nice.
Okay, that's another way to do it. The reason I asked about outlining and if the Story Hill materials are working is how how much is your outline filled out at this point?
60%.
Okay, now have you written that 60% of the book that you've
Yeah,
outlined? Okay,
yeah,
so, all right, so I'm wondering if doing your outline, plot points, turning points, steps, whatever comes next on the Writing Rabble blank outline, if you do like maybe three of those at a time, right? Not
yeah,
not not full, not fill them all out, or not do all the prose writing,
right.
but kind of thinking ahead, what maybe a couple of chapters or just a couple of story beats. You're like, okay, um, I'm gonna I'm gonna keep the outline three beats ahead
Yeah,
of where I'm writing. That way, when I sit down tomorrow or Wednesday, that part of the outline is already prompting me what
yeah,
needs to be written.
yeah. That's good. I mean, of course, it comes back to the outline.
Yeah, I hate to do that to you, but
Thought I was in the advanced class where we could ignore the outline.
dude, I'm not in the advanced class. As a matter of fact, I'm trying to get back to the outline always, because it's what works for me. Now, some writers love sitting down and just pantsing it, flying by the seat of their pants.
Yeah, yeah,
And I know we have talked about this before on previous sessions that I, that's what I was doing, and I couldn't finish anything until I learned to outline.
yeah,
I had good what I think is good concept, interesting characters, um, uh, interesting scenes and dialogue, but then I would run out of road because I didn't know where any of this was going.
yeah,
And then more recently, by the way, having been the latest person to discover central conflict, continually going back to that conflict
yeah,
and looking at what this next beat or this next phase or this next turning point, how that correlates with and advances that central conflict,
yeah.
right?
It
In
makes
fact,
sense. Yeah,
mm,
and I love just pantsing it, but yeah, it's when the I don't know what the metaphor is or the analogy, but when the pants run out, then it's like just making stuff up now. Which
yeah, yeah.
so no, that's good.
I hate it when my pants run out.
Yeah, whatever that
It
means, but yeah,
Yeah, and I was actually listening to a YouTube thing today, and these two, who I think they said they were sisters, and they're romance writers. I'm looking for it in my thing here in my. And by the way, I did put that. Let's see. I can't remember exactly how to write better internal conflict,
oh
which correlates pretty well to, I believe anyway. I still have to look into it a little bit more, but it correlates pretty well with the conflict axis that I created. And I'm going to try to bring it up and see if I can show that again. Because and again, I need to study this a little bit more, but well, one thing that one of the authors said is that stories that suck don't have the internal conflict of the characters,
oh my
which
gosh, yeah,
yeah, of course, right, and
yeah,
that you don't care
mm-hmm,
because the and one other thing that she said that I really liked is that regardless of the story, um, you could be every bit engaged with the story if the internal conflict is strong. So you can identify strongly with that that main character.
hmm.
which I thought was a great point and kind of correlates too with what I've been saying about central conflict.
Hmm.
That now that I'm finding that it has been missing, now it's like, oh, okay, I get it.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna pull up, go to window instead, share that, and then let's bring this up. So yeah, let's look at the conflict axis here. So the way she was talking about internal conflict, I think correlates fairly well with these points. And I still have to work on this some more because I realized that I was having a hard time explaining why when I first created this axis, why all the quadrants each had a plot and a character arc point.
Yeah.
But so maybe this newer version with only one with either plot or character arc applying to each of the quadrants rather than to each, maybe this is more clear. But regarding what she was saying about the internal conflict, what I am suggesting with this conflict axis is that if if a person's wants are a plot point and a person's needs are a character arc point,
Hmm.
that this may express internal conflict.
Mm.
Right? You following me?
Yep.
Clear as mud, right?
Yeah.
And so between the wants and needs on the upper two quadrants and the anti-wants and anti-needs, what's working against those on
Hmm.
the lower two quadrants, this may this may well encompass both the plot conflict and the internal conflict. That's what I am considering. Still working on it. Got a little ways to go.
That's a lot to chew on.
Yeah, well, and this is the way my mind works. I I I showed this to my writer friend while I was in Phoenix, and he's also a teacher. Um, and he said, yeah, it's all interesting, it's all there, but it looks kind of complicated. And he showed me what he uses, and it's much simpler. But to me, it's it, that very simple explanation or view of it,
Hmm.
it again, just like I'm like the opposite. He looks at mine and says, "Yeah, it's all there, but it's complicated." And I look at his and go, "Yeah, it's all there, but it's too simple." Right?
Yeah.
And what I'm trying to do with the story hill is to really what's the right word? To really expose and explain each of those things,
Yeah.
right? So, he had a character one like his was it starts out it's something like this. I don't remember exactly, but something like character wants something and then goes about getting it, and then there's a shaky line showing the conflict that they have to go through, and then the
Yeah.
character gets so now I'm aware of that. But again, I mean, to be fair, he's this is his presentation for I think what are his first level writers.
Yeah.
So yes, it can start out to be that simple as far as explaining what story is. However, I need to know what's between and what is among each of those phases of the story.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm hopefully providing you
Hmm.
is that, that process um, to really identify what each of those plot points and turning points and everything are, so that you feel more confident in your story as you're writing it, and you miss less stuff, and at the same time you produce less unusable stuff,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So hopefully you're getting a little more confident and a little more efficient, right?
I hope so.
Yeah, I hope so too. And I hope at the same time I am getting more confident and efficient and or competent. So does that help with your gaps, your time gaps, and where to pick up the story?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's good.
So, and then you can even break it down even further, so that you say, okay, what's within this scene that has to happen,
Yeah.
right? Or where's it going? And then I'm going to write out, let's say, 4 lines or 5 lines that say, okay, Russ, my main character, needs something. Uh, uh, Bob shows up at the house, right?
Hmm.
So that each of those, if you stop at any point, you have a much shorter bridge,
Yeah.
or you have a bridge
Yeah.
there,
Yeah.
right? So that when you get back to it, you know exactly where to pick up.
Yeah.
And then maybe one of the tricks you do is, and by the way, I've been considering a little formula for scenes. I know that they are out there.
Hmm.
Um, and you also may just develop one intuitively for yourself as you're writing out these little beats in the in your for your scenes. Um, but yeah, there are kind of certain things that intuitively happen within a scene,
Yeah.
but a little bit of a little chart, for lack of a better term, to put down might give you those little footbridges that you need to pick up where you left off.
Yeah.
Oh, and one of the things I was going to say was, let's say that you don't have a time to write a whole chapter, and can you but you probably would have time to write one of those beats within the chapter,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So it might break it down small enough so that it still gives you a little goal to reach. Even and it's a small goal. It's a small chunk of work that needs to be done.
Yeah. No, I think that's good. I think if I had, if my outline was stronger, it wouldn't take me as much time to dive in and to get all the scuba equipment on. I'd already be ready to go. So I think going back to the outline will be super helpful. And then yeah, the just sort of identifying what needs to happen, and then because I can use that side margin on Scrivener and just put notes in there and just say this is what needs to happen. And then
Hmm.
so yeah,
Okay, good.
and
Well,
it's just like when I have that like 20 minutes, I'm like, I just want to do what's fun, and that means just pantsing it. So
yeah.
but it gets to be a certain point where I'm like, all right, we ran out of pants again. So
Run out of pants.
yeah,
I
so
hate it
yeah,
when I hate it when we run out of pants.
I know.
Okay, so is that helpful?
Very good.
Okay, well, your experiment with those, it'll be interesting to see how they go and what you find out as far as working for you.
Yeah.
And then maybe we include something like that in the Writing Rabble materials at some point.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah, yeah, that's good stuff, Wes. Um, okay, so one of the things you said was how often do you go back and reread the story?
Yeah.
Well, we sort of just kind of answered that.
Yeah.
And so again, for me, one thing is if I hear the story too many times, I get sick of hearing it.
Hmm.
So Now, were you asking how often you go back and read parts of the story for so you can stay fresh, or are you saying I want to, I feel like I need to, catch up on this full story that I've written up to this point every week or 3 weeks or something, or?
Yeah, kind of. I'm worried about continuity stuff where,
Hmm.
if I said that he smells like patchouli early on, that's something that I want to make sure that I remember because that
Hmm.
could be a foreshadowing technique. And I don't want to write a scene later on where all of a sudden the guy smells like sage. And I'm like, and then it's like, I mean, I'll catch that in the editing process, but I would like to not have to, catch that in the editing process. I also don't want to reread the damn thing every other day, too. That would be
No, you definitely talk about having trouble getting started,
right.
restarted every time.
Right.
Okay, so I think the foreshadowing question, which we'll talk about in a couple of minutes, and this rereading question are two separate things. I understand how they relate, but um, are you feeling compelled to reread big sections or the whole thing?
No, not big sections, shorter bits. And I'm finding this stuff, and really, it's not a really a problem if the outline is stronger and the character sketches are more fleshed out.
So what you're saying that you may feel less compelled to reread if those pieces were in place, those outlining pieces.
Yeah, because we kind of already answered the question. I think the previous question solution sort of solves this problem too. So
Okay. Well, and again, well, you know what? I like reading I like reading what I've written,
yeah,
and I could tweak until doomsday,
right.
and never get anything finished. But so there is I mean, if you like to read, and you're excited about the story and you want to do it right, or you just want to relive, a little bit how well, and a lot of times, I'm rereading because it was so much fun, just like watching a movie or TV show for the first time, that if it's really good, you kind of want to go back and see it again
Yeah.
because it's a surprise, and I will like to go back and relive that little surprise.
Hmm.
So that is most likely my problem in wanting to reread stuff. Um, but it could slow you down,
Yeah.
and looking for those continuity things, that is something that mostly will be done on your second draft,
Okay.
maybe before even an editor sees it. And after that, it's a continuity error or a typo or something like that.
Yeah.
But after that is when an editor or even a beta reader catches it.
So
Because
don't worry about it for now.
no, because and honestly, once you've written it and done another edit on it, it's gonna start becoming so mm, ingrained in your mind that you
Yeah.
won't see that stuff anyway.
Okay.
Because you, as the writer, your brain is just going to fill it in.
Yeah.
And I mean, I get that all the time where I could literally read something 5 times and not see the typo that somebody else sees.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So your that's that like you said, that's why you have an editing process and get
Hmm.
other people involved.
Okay.
All right. Seems like there's something else worth saying about that, but maybe it'll come to me later. Okay. Now, let's talk about foreshadowing. That always sounds so foreboding to me.
Foreboding.
Okay, so how to go back in and layer in foreshadowing. Talk about that a little bit. What you're thinking, what you think is missing, or what you found is not there in earlier parts that you've written.
Well, this character he was always going to be early. Who was going to be introduced early on, and he was always going to show up during the sort of goal change scene. Um, Now I'm wondering how much more breadcrumbs to leave the reader in terms of going back and putting this character into scenes, maybe in the background. I don't want it to be too obvious. Um, but then I'm asking myself, does this character need to be there? I just don't know how much hand holding people want, need, expect, you know? I don't want them to not know who this character is when they're introduced later on again, because there's going to be a lot where they're just not in it. So,
Yeah.
not a real clear question there, but it's just
No,
it's
I kind of get what you're saying.
yeah,
It's akin to the what they call, I guess, the Deus ex machina, you know, phenomenon at the end when all of a sudden, some outside force or element that has not ever been mentioned in the book comes in and saves everybody.
right,
And then you're like, where did that come from? That's a
right,
total cop out. You
yeah,
can't, you must be doing that because you don't know how to write a story or you don't know how to finish a story.
yeah. Ran into a deadline Friday at four
Yeah,
o'clock.
really.
We gotta
Oh
end
yeah,
this thing.
we'll just have Hunter S. Thompson rise from the grave and fix this.
Yeah,
So I think that's a kind of thing that you're thinking about. Is that fair?
yeah, to some
Okay.
extent, yeah,
All right. Well, then in that case, what I would say is, examine what you've written and and when this character shows up and ask yourself questions like, is this too easy? That they show up now.
yeah,
Are they showing up to solve a problem that I, as the writer, don't know how to solve?
yeah,
Right. Um, Other questions might be something like, does this character uh, act like they want to take over the story?
hmm,
Because that might be an indication that they're either in the wrong place or they need more build up uh, in previous scenes and chapters.
yeah,
Does that make sense?
yeah. No, that is what I'm kind of running into, where I may be giving this character a bigger role now and trying to justify it by kind of plopping them back in later on. So that's a good
Okay.
question.
So can you say in general terms what this character does at the point of the goal change at 50% that you're
He's going to offer the way out, the way to the. It's going to change his mind, or I'm not
whose
being clear.
mind?
So Russ has been going on this one path, and
Yeah.
this character is going to show up and say, "Hey, there's another option.
Okay.
There's a different path that you can go on."
And Russ is going to take that option or
Yes.
that path? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Now, where does this character come from in this scene? What is there? So, when I'm talking about character development, I say, what is their role? What is their occupation or role within the story?
They are a good user of the luck energy.
Okay. And what does this character do anything else that advances the plot or complicates things for your main character?
He knew Russ's dad,
Okay.
was good friends with him, so can shed light on Russ's background and
Oh,
history and all that.
okay. Yeah. Now, did Russ know him?
He met him at the funeral, but he did
Okay.
not know him up until then.
And did you describe was the funeral a scene earlier in the book?
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting, interesting, interesting. And did Russ get hints from his dad about what this character could do within this universe.
No, but that's a good idea.
Yeah. So, and I don't know how much interaction you have between Russ and his father, or, either as scenes or in Russ's reflections,
Yeah.
on his discussions and contact with his dad. But um, he could, this character could loom larger in Russ's relationship with his father than, a second party or third party really should,
Hmm.
right? And then he meets the legendary
Yeah.
legendary Edward, oh, you're the legendary Edward. Dad wouldn't shut up about you.
Yeah.
He was
Yeah.
always telling stories about how you did this and you did that. And those stories that his father told him, maybe about Edward, for lack of a better name, uh, have a dual or a hidden meaning or a second meaning
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
always. And so Russ may even be a little resentful at Edward because, it appears that Edward had more of his dad's attention than Russ himself did,
Oh,
even
sure.
though he craved it, right?
Yeah.
So, he may be a little um, douchey to Edward
Yeah. Yeah.
because this Edward is a character who was kind of competition for his own place in his father's life, right?
Yeah. Absolutely.
And but when this point happens and Edward shows up and points Russ in a different direction, now all those uh, all of those little sayings or little stories or whatever that his dad said about Edward have, you know,
Yeah.
the meaning is flipped.
You're right.
So that is a possibility.
I like that. I can do a lot with that.
Yeah. So, so this gets to the subject of economy, right? The idea that nothing within your story should be surplus and nothing in your story should be wasted, right? So as you're developing this world and this story within this world, you can use characters, situations, conflicts, misunderstandings, right? In all these different ways, And to my thinking, what that does is it makes this world more cohesive, right? And gives you as the writer more opportunities for conflict and tension and happiness and resolution and help and you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Okay, so I am making sense.
Yep.
Okay. So so Dad's stupid stories about Edward, who was always
Right.
around, and I never got the time that Edward got, with me, and then maybe Edward checks on him a couple of times
Yeah.
in that phase, between the funeral and the 50% point where he shows up, and Russ could be an ass to him, you know.
Yeah.
Why do you keep contacting me? I don't want to talk to you, right?
Right. That's
You,
exactly what I was gonna do is write in scenes like that. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, exactly. So this guy is like an annoyance that
Right.
Russ is constantly trying to wave away. And then when Russ is in serious trouble,
Yep.
he gets to that point where he has to make a goal change but doesn't know how or doesn't know what. This character comes back and fulfills his true role in Russ's story.
That's exactly, yep, that's exactly what's happening. Yep.
Okay. Yeah, so I'd say that yeah, it deserves yeah, probably deserves some mentions
Okay.
earlier.
Okay.
Now, you can go back and write those in now or just make a note that, you know,
Yeah.
y- just drop a little note at the top of whatever the a chapter might be or in your Scrivener document within that file just to say Edward calls Russ. Russ, yells at him, or Russ
Right.
doesn't take his call, or something like that. Or yeah, like Russ shows up somewhere. I'm sorry, Edward shows up somewhere in the background, or there is evidence of Russ's presence that maybe even I'm sorry, there's evidence of Edward's presence that maybe even Russ doesn't recognize at the time.
Yeah. 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 That's
So
why
you're
the
yeah,
patchouli
so
smell is so important.
what?
That's why the patchouli thing was introduced early on.
Oh,
So I could
oh,
just have
okay.
him. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And maybe that and again that your little patchouli scent aroma might have other meanings too.
Hmm.
Might remind him of his dad. Maybe it
Yep.
reminds him of his dad because Edward was always around,
Right.
something like that. Or maybe even reminds him of, a bad or traumatic event or something. So, economy, use everything. It doesn't mean that you start with next to nothing and try to make something of it. It just
Yeah.
means that as you develop the story, use every element, every character to its maximum.
Okay.
I think that makes a richer story,
Yeah.
both for you writing it and for the reader.
Yeah.
Okay,
Cool.
right on. How does that feel compared to where you've been the past few days thinking about those topics?
This is good. Yeah. Tons to work on here. And I feel like I'm ready to go. So, yeah.
Excellent. Yeah, I wouldn't want for you to fall into a hole like I did last year with this trilogy and, never be able to get out of it or
Yeah.
have to call in the National Guard
Yeah.
to come in and fix it for you.
Yeah.
Um, Okay, cool. And yeah, so kind of it'll be interesting and fun to get your updates on how those are working for you.
Yeah.
And guarantee you'll have other issues and that that you want to work out. So,
Yeah.
all right. Anything else that you want to talk about or bring up or
No, good to
give a
go,
shout
man.
out or okay, excellent. Well, we're at well under an hour this time. Woo woo! So we finally made it.
Finally
Um,
did it.
yeah. And to be fair, I had all of this story hill and outlining material and stuff to go over early on too. So
Yeah.
now we're actually a little more into applying what what we've talked about up to this
Hmm.
point. So all right. Well, let me play us out and then we'll get everybody on their way. All right. Thanks for joining us, Writing Rabble. This has been a really fun session and short, so I didn't get bored in between or in the middle of it. So, and hopefully you didn't either. But so we gave a little update, or I gave a little update on what we've been doing with my comic book Badass Girl and the Comic Cons that we're visiting with Badass Girl this year, and I also gave a little more update on how I'm learning about romance writing and central conflict and internal conflict. And then we went over Russ's questions about, how to pick up the story, how to keep writing when you've got a little bit of a gap. And we talked about some strategies for that. And then as far as rereading what you've written already, why you want to do that, and whether you should or should not. There are probably good motives for either of them, but and whatever works for you is what matters. And then we talked a bit about foreshadowing regarding a specific character that Wes has in his book, and Thought we had a really good discussion and some solutions for him to keep him writing. So it's been a great session, Writing Rabble. We're glad that you're here. If you want to learn more about my experience as a writer, the book, The Writing Rabble, Write and Publish Your Books Your Way, is available on Kindle and Amazon paperback, and you can find a link to it down in the I don't think they call them story notes, they call them credits or description. So I hope that if you're curious about how I've gotten as far as I have without killing myself, that information is in there, and I'm also going to be putting together more materials for the Writing Rabble to help writers out. So until next time. Oh, by the way, like the video. That helps other writers find us. Subscribing to the Writing Rabble channel doesn't cost anything, but it helps me raise the profile of the Writing Rabble and what we're trying to do here. And comment in the comments. I'd love to hear what you guys have to say, your reactions to what we talk about, because all of this, all of your thoughts and comments will help me make the Writing Rabble better for us and for other writers. So appreciate you guys being here, and until next time, Bud and Chair, words on page. Bye now.